From the home office in Regina, it's time now for tonight's top 10 list. The list is not from late night's David Letterman. It's from the provincial legislature's Scott Moe. Last week, the Premier released a list of 10 changes that Ottawa, quote, must take to reset the relationship with Saskatchewan. Plus, there's another election this weekend. We've had a lot of them, this time with Métis Nation, Saskatchewan. And finally, you've got mail today, but likely not tomorrow, as Canada Post workers are scheduled to strike. Well, to weigh in on all of this, we have assembled the 306 Public Affairs panel. Jack Saddleback is a professional speaker in Saskatoon. Dale Richardson is principal at Earnscliffe Strategies in Regina. Good afternoon, Dale.
Hello.
And good afternoon, Jack.
Hey, Dante.
There you
Hello.
go.
Turn your mic on, Jack.
Jack's got it.
Y'all weren't in the room with me this time around.
I know.
I miss you already. Let's start with the Premier's list of 10 policy changes he wants Prime Minister Mark Carney to make. You know, the list includes the immediate negotiations with China to remove tariffs on agricultural food products, the expansion of pipeline capacity, and changes to the criminal code to address bail reform and harsher penalties for drugs. There is a bit of a theme throughout a few of them, so I'll let you guys kind of take them on yourself. But Jack, just overall, how do you feel about the Premier making a list of demands?
Well, he wasn't the only Premier to make demands. There have been other ones, such as Doug Ford. And with the meeting of the Prime Minister and the Premiers coming up on June 2nd, I think everyone in town is putting their list together as I like to say, Santa Claus is coming to town. So you might as well find out what presents you can ask for and see whether or not you're going to get a pair of socks or a new pony. Needless to say, we got Scott Moe, who has put together quite a comprehensive list. I find them in groupings of: one is international trade, two is internal trade and infrastructure, that's in Canada, three is energy and climate, and four is crime. What's being asked here, some of them are feasible, and I think we're going to go into that a little bit more. But some of them, I do know that, I feel that Moe understands that some of these asks are a little too far out there in the stars.
Dale, just overall, how do you feel about the Premier kind of starting this relationship by saying, here's our list, this is what we want?
I mean, the list is things that we've talked a number of times on this show now. So, I mean, to the Premier's credit on that topic, I mean, the fact that we keep talking about what he is talking about means he's having a good day and he's having good weeks politically. So, I mean, that's it's just kind of a little political comms thing. This list of, I wouldn't even call them demands, honestly. There are things that he has been talking about for a long time, and they are things...
I mean, the Premier did say must. What was the exact wording? I don't have it in front of me now. Yeah,
I think the difference, though,
must make. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's rhetoric. I think the difference on that, though, Peter, is that in tone... like publicly, besides in a letter, the Premier Moe's tone has been different from somebody like Danielle Smith in Alberta, where she has said in so many ways that if the federal government doesn't do what we say they need to do, we're going to separate. We're going to have a vote. Premier Moe, these are these items that he's gone through. I think these are things that he's talked about. These are things that are very important to this province. I don't think any of them are going to be surprises to Prime Minister Carney or to the Liberal government. So I think that this approach that the Premier has taken is a great one.
Well, and to your point, I mean, it is a different approach than he took with Prime Minister Trudeau.
Right.
When Scott Moe was first elected leader, he was immediately kind of going to battle with the Prime Minister. Whereas this, he's consistently said, or taking a let's wait and see, let's try to build this relationship approach.
I thought we had agreed to leave Justin Trudeau in the past, though, Peter. my PTSD is kicking in again. Again. And I think I said this on the last show that we did together, that even people in Saskatchewan, to a certain degree, much more so than with Trudeau, are looking at Mark Carney and saying, you know what, he is clearly a different person than Justin Trudeau. Let's see what he does here. I think that this list of demands gives him an opportunity to do some of these or to not. So I guess we'll see what he does.
Jack, when you look at it, which again, there are a few that I think most people, I don't ever want to say everybody, but most people would agree that they would support, I guess. We've talked many times about stop trying to collect carbon tax on home heating. We've talked about this many times on the show. Why is it treated differently in Atlantic Canada compared to here? So, and in general, nobody wants to pay more taxes. Which of these recommendations do you look at and say either that's difficult to do or we shouldn't be doing that?
Well, let's look at the difficult ones first. Number one is the aspect of the criminal code and the discussions that need to happen when challenges to the criminal code go through process. It's a very long process to change the criminal code, and certainly federal governments can expedite these processes through very rare instances. We heard such as the Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre talk about using the notwithstanding clause to change the criminal code. That is an extreme and rare instance to be able to do that. Other ways to be able to do are consultation and then through legislation, so the due process of getting input from folks. I think that's one that across Canada has been something that's starting to bubble up. Within that, though, the complexity and the challenge is how do we address the deeper-seated aspects of criminality that we're seeing? We're seeing a rise in very toxic drug use. Where does that root system come from when we're looking at why people are ending up in criminal systems? One is the cutting of social services. Two is youth getting caught up into these instances of crime and drugs because they have nowhere else to go because social services are cut and other programs. So when we're looking at that ask on the list, I think that is one that will, yes, be long and a due process, but I think across Canada would be one to take up. The other one, and I think Dale and I are going to go to bat on this, is the Impact Assessment Act, which has only been around since about 2019. And I know that Premier Moe has asked to repeal that Impact Assessment Act, but this particular one is fascinating because, and I quote here, the Impact Assessment Act is to ensure pipelines and other resources are built to the highest standards and to evaluate whether any environmental or social impacts are justified by the benefits of the project. God. So essentially, you want net public benefit. Everyone's good, without doing undue harm. So this also needs to include Indigenous communities. And we know from past instances that Scott Moe has not been the best at consultation. And that includes, yes, First Nations, but also Métis, as we're going to talk about later.
Dale, you can jump in on that specific demand, I'd love lack of a better word, from the Premier if you want. But are there any others that stood out to you as well?
Well, getting rid of the Chinese tariffs on canola, we've talked about that last time on the show. That, to me, is a slam dunk because the reason that was put in place by the Chinese was because Canada put I think it's 100% tax on Chinese EVs. I don't know of anybody in my life that owns a Chinese EV, and there's some, obviously some foreign policy going on there, and a whole lot of stuff happening, but canola and other products in Canada that have these tariffs on them, it's a major industry, not just for Canada, but for this province in particular. So that seems like an easy one. And
let me just jump in quickly on that because I don't want to criticize your thoughts at all, but it is because we've talked about this so much where I think everybody in this province would agree. We want to be able to get our canola and other products to other countries. But with the EVs, it's a big, complicated conversation because if you allow Chinese EVs to flood the market, it will affect us significantly.
At least start the conversation, right? Which the previous government, for whatever reason, was not interested in doing. So even if the Prime Minister or his ministers pick up the phone to the Chinese and say, listen, let's start to work on this. It's not going to happen with one phone call, but this is major for Canada, so we need some movement. Jack's right. We can go back and forth all day on pipelines and the No More Pipelines Act, C-69. I honestly thought that there probably could have been some movement on building new pipelines in Canada. Unfortunately, Stephen Guilbeault likes to, even though he's not environment minister anymore, that guy gets near any microphone, he is going to open his mouth and talk about how we have enough pipelines in Canada to begin with. So that wasn't helpful when I think it was on the day of the cabinet appointments. Not helpful at all. So anyway, that's all to say. We'll see what happens here. I wouldn't be surprised if half of this list starts to get moved on by the feds. And if that's the case, honestly, I think the Premier will be quite happy with that.
Well, to that point, Jack, do you see the Prime Minister being willing to address some of these, in the short term?
Oh, most certainly. When we're looking at the internal trade and infrastructure, that is one that has been talked about not only by the now Prime Minister, but also all of the premiers, is how do we start to address some of these gaps that we have come to understand within our internal aspects of our economy that have become blatantly clear because of the situation that we have with our southern neighbors, the Americans, is that we need to start moving across provinces and territories. And that's one of the ones that I think would be a clear win for all premiers and the Prime Minister.
Where do you find, a lot of this is centered around environmental policy and energy policy, right? Naturally, the Saskatchewan government wants less regulations and be able to still use coal power. Mm-hmm. But how do you balance that? How do you, maintain the energy sources that, as the Premier would say, make the province a lot of money and create a lot of jobs, but also, protect the environment without just scrapping all regulations?
Yeah, I don't think that the feds are going to totally get rid of all regulations. I think that that's unlikely. But, I think if I were the Premier, and thank God that I'm not, he has a hard job and I don't want it. The next time I talk to Prime Minister Carney, I would be saying to him, Prime Minister, you said many times during the campaign and since that you are not Justin Trudeau. Moving on, at least, on some of these climate-focused, climate-obsessed policies, which is really what was going on with the Trudeau government. Moving on from these is going to be a great signal to the people that voted for you, that chose to give you their vote, that I am a different person. I am going to go about things a little bit different. Doesn't mean that you're going to totally forget about the environment and do absolutely nothing, because that doesn't make sense to do that. But if you move on a few of these things, you are going to show that you are your own man and that you're serious.
Jack, what do you think about that push and pull, on the environment, the province wanting to, regulate heavy emitters and allow coal power plants to keep going?
It is a tough balance that Dale is alluding to when it comes to policy around the economy and in balance with the environment. And the economy, I'm more looking at energy and resources. We cannot be short-sighted within this conversation. And credit to Dale as well, I think you definitely alluded to that, is that there needs to be some conversations, some serious conversations around the climate and energy and resources, and how to unionize those two in a way that is going to be harmonic. And I use that very loosely because that is a very complex ask right now. When we're looking at the repeal of the oil and gas emissions and the chucking out of the clean energy regulations within this top 10 list, I do certainly have some concerns about what type of solutions or ideas is the province looking into. And I say those concerns with an open arm to be able to say, throw out some solutions out there. Carney is one seat at the table, but Moe is the other seat at the table. And when folks come with solutions, that's when we see progress happen. So this June 2nd meeting is going to be a fun, spicy time.
We're going to talk about the Métis Nation Saskatchewan election in a second, but that did get me thinking. I was like, well, who's making demands or who's making a list for the provincial government? I wondered, do you guys have what would be one thing that you'd want the provincial government to do? Dale, do you have a list?
Oh, for me? Oh, man. This was in our list of topics, and I'm such a bad panelist that I couldn't come up with anything.
You're just so satisfied with everything already.
There's a lot. Okay, here is one. It would be to force the city of Regina to lower the speed limit along Regina Avenue, because I think I've mentioned this on the show before that I'm nervous for mine and my family's safety.
Enough.
Every time I cross Regina Avenue, crazy drivers trying to get to work at 7:55 a.m. But I'm also not a big fan of e-bikes on walking paths.
Okay.
For the same reason, pedestrian safety. But
Pedestrian safety, that's a big one.
City of Regina.
There you go. We got
Chad.
a demand for the city of Regina. What about you, Jack? Anything come to mind?
I got two things. One is definitely work on this accelerated housing policy and accelerating house building, not only for the province of Saskatchewan, but all across Canada here, because those house prices are pretty high right now. And like, it's unfortunate to see that some folks can't even look at buying a house. Number two is more communication policies within interprovincial healthcare systems. We're seeing people fall through some gaps right now, and as a person who works within works within the larger scheme of healthcare, this is of grave concern, because now we have people moving from province to province. A lot of people are starting to move here to Saskatoon and Saskatchewan as a whole, and yet their healthcare coverage may not be kicking in until 3 months after they set foot in our province. So, if anything happens within that 3 months, heaven forbid, they're going to have to foot a bill.
All right, thank God Jack is around to actually put in the work and put in some thought into these questions that you and the producers have asked us to think about.
Yeah, but those speed limits
Oh,
on
yeah. Well, people would care about both or all those issues. Well, let's turn to that other election. We've had a lot this past year. This weekend, there's a leadership vote for Métis Nation Saskatchewan, and this is relevant to our conversation because that is intergovernmental relations. Jack, I'm wondering, do you know what's top of mind for Métis voters right now?
Certainly. This is a fun election to watch. As over the years, we've seen that the Métis Nation certainly has come through some interesting and eclectic election times. And I'll just put it that way because within their own elections, certainly they have their own interpersonal challenges. It's long-standing challenges that go back for generations and so on and so forth, as well as the colonial structures that put pressures on these types of elections for Indigenous peoples. But when we're looking at the top things that happen for the Métis Nation, what I've been hearing, and please, if I'm wrong, please, Métis folks, let me know, is the aspect of the modern treaty that is coming forward. It was introduced last year, and consultations have been happening, but that hasn't actually come to a vote, and the general public does not know what that modern treaty looks like just yet. Number two is the Aboriginal land titles that go within the jurisdictions of Métis land title claims, where we have seen some challenges within the Saskatchewan provincial government when it comes to recognizing these land claims. So the intergovernmental conversations that will come out in the next few months are going to be top of mind for these elected officials that we will know about on Saturday evening, if not Sunday morning.
Yeah, and Dale, what does that relationship look like, for example, between the provincial government and Métis Nation Saskatchewan? And I do come back to Scott Moe's demands or list for the federal government. A lot of these would be relevant to Métis Nation Saskatchewan.
I'm not an expert on this by any means. My understanding is that generally the relationship between the province and the leadership of Métis Nation is pretty good, I think. But yeah, no, there's it's a nation to nation, government to government relationship. Just I mean, you just said that, Peter. It's like the province working with the feds or with the city. So no, it's very important.
Maybe I could put this in a better way.
Sure.
Is this going to become a more critical relationship as we do talk a lot about resource revenue and as they get a new leader?
No, for sure. And we have talked about this issue on a previous show where the Métis Nation has been litigious with certain natural resource companies in this province in the last number of years, just in terms of resource rights and ensuring that their members are getting a fair share of the resources that are in this province. So I think that's been a bit of a challenging issue for the province. I don't know if they've been entirely certain about how to navigate that because it's a relatively new thing, what's been going on in terms of Métis Nation wanting resource sharing with certain companies, but yeah, no, it's very important going forward.
We're not going to have enough time to talk Canada Post. The good news
The
is...
listeners of CBC would have loved my thoughts on the Canada Post
Well,
strike.
I mean, we hope that a labor dispute doesn't go on too long, but there's a good chance in 2 weeks it might still be a thing. So we come back to it then, and I know we're going to have more coverage if they do, in fact, go on strike tomorrow. So,
Shucks.
Jack Dale, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Jack Saddleback and Dale Richardson make up our public affairs panel on the 306. Really great conversation today. And if you have thoughts on anything you just heard, text 306-807-3561. Email the 306 at cbc.ca or call us and leave a message on Talkback 1-800-661-7540.